here's the room. And I gotta clear all that out and we'll start demo. What you doing, Davis?
Smashing!
What's that called?
Demo!
Demo.
And I'm
Demoing it out. Demo is done. Got it mostly cleaned out. Took off most of that. Some weird thing that was up here once for a now defunct AC system. And see, I put on a little 1 and 2.5 inch board there. I've got some plywood filling in gaps. Now, if this were a different floor, what we do is replace that with flooring that's a closet for laundry, so it's going to be covered up and we don't care. So the next step is going to be the actual construction, putting in some drywall and then putting in the doors. We're still working on this here. Davis helped me find the studs, and we hung a nail on each stud and dropped a plumb bob and marked lines. And I'm putting in these rails here. They'll go around kind of like those up there. And that's where a big shelf will fit. And I'll show you the shelf here. So here is a couple of 1x12s, which we've sandwiched together. And I used a biscuit cutter to put some biscuits in there. Those are like little slim pieces of wood that actually are in there holding it as one piece. And then these clamps will let this glue dry. And this, once it's sanded and painted, will look like one big shelf, one big piece of wood that'll go. So here we are inside the work. We've got this old hole here. I believe it was return air for an old AC system that doesn't exist anymore. That's where it went down. That'll cover with drywall. But up here, if I want to put drywall up, there are no studs. So I'm going to have to cut and add some 2x4s to create studs for screwing the drywall on. So let's talk about marking and cutting here. I'm going to mark about 8¼ inches. That's what I measured for my first stud I'm going to include. And that's a very short stud, really. So I'm marking it with kind of a triangle or an arrow that points right to that 8¼ inches. Then I'll take my speed square, I'll put my pencil on the point of that, bring the speed square to it, and then making sure that this is nice and flush, pushing up with some pressure. I get my line. Gotta work this around the camera here. Woo, that's hard. Put on my eye protection, which you can't see right now. Check that I'm lined up. Looks good. Keeping my fingers away from the blade. And I got my little piece. I'll go fasten this in. Well, so we got a couple of studs up in there. They're just kind of sistered on, and I'm going to show you what those look like. Here we go, my videographer. Thank you, Davis. They don't have to be perfect because all we need is something to screw the drywall into. And so when we fasten it, those will hold a piece at the top and a piece here at the side. And then we'll run something down that, which is a stud that I cannot remove. All right, we're going to talk about the drywall. And here's a piece of drywall. This was, you can see here, 50% off because it was all marred, but we only need pieces of it, so I don't really care. And what we're going to do is score this and cut it to shape. All right, so there's lots of ways to do this. This is the easiest way. I've got the face side. That's the side that faces out. And I've got my marks. Good thing about drywall is you don't have to be super exact with it. You can fill gaps with compound. So there's my line. And what I'm going to do is take my utility knife and just score this side right through the face paper down the line. Once that's done, I'll take it to the edge, give it a bop, cracks it. I'll turn it back over, lift it up a little bit, and then I'm going to score the paper side, this kind of cardboard side. And I got my piece of drywall. It should fit in that spot. All right, that piece we cut is up, and it's held in place by 4 fasteners. So you want to make sure you get your fastener all the way through the surface so it's not sticking out. All right, drywall's up. Got everything covered. All right, let's take a look at where we are now. And now I've got that first coat of JC or joint compound on there. It goes on pink. You can see where it's already drying to white. Once it's all white, I'll give it a light sand, and we'll put the next coat on with some tape. So the drywall's up, taped and bedded, and I've sprayed a light texture on. It doesn't really match the house, but it's a closet, so it'll be okay. And I'll let that dry for about 2 hours or so, and then we'll start painting. All right, well, I couldn't show you this because I was working on it and I had other hands, so I didn't have anyone to film, but doors are in and shimmed. And so it's a big double door set. And I'll get in close on the shims there. You can see how they work. And behind each shim, sorry about that, we see up here, there's the 3-inch screw going into the wall. And so next step will be to cut off all those shims. They'll just snap off with a knife and then start trimming and painting. All right, so right now let's look at a problem and how we're going to correct it. So here we have the hole the plumber cut out. I don't do much of my own plumbing. I'll put a sink in or something, but this was running a lot of line under the house and I'm not doing that. So here they put it in, and then we have an issue. Down here at the bottom, here's the drain, and it's butted right up against the molding here, which means I can't just fill this in. This is why I never filled that in with a sheetrock. So there are lots of different ways I could solve this. This is right behind the washer. No one's ever going to see it. And over here I have a stud. So there's wood right there. So what I'm going to do is cut a piece of wood, attach that to the stud, paint over it, and unless the washer's out, no one will know it's there. But if there's ever a problem with the plumbing, I can just unscrew the piece, take it out, and fix it. Take a look. Got my first coat of paint up. Probably won't do much more because it is a closet. But all that's white. It was leftover paint from an old job. Here's that wall that we replaced, where I had to redo all the drywall and texture. You can see it's pretty good. I wouldn't pass that off in a bedroom, but fine for a closet. So next steps will be to finish off the shelving, get my trim on all around the outside there, and trim on the inside, clean the floor, put the washer and dryer back in, shelves in good. All right, we'll check in later. All right, so this is how we're gonna do our long cut here. Well, not that long, but I don't have a table saw. So if I wanna make a cut like this, what I'm gonna do is use my circ saw here, and I made a little jig. So I want to make a 72-inch long single piece of wood. This is the two we biscuit jointed together. And so what I've done is make 2 marks at 70.5 inches because that's the width here from the edge of the guide to the blade. 7 is 1.5 inches. So 70.5 should give me 72 inches in total length. And so I'll run this circ saw right down this guide here, this jig, and I should get a pretty clean cut. Let's see how it works. A little issue in the middle where the wood was binding up on me, and I'm not sure, a little warp in there I think, but we got a nice cut there, and I'll see if this fits. Well, all right, so it fits. Just did a little check. You always dry fit everything. Put it together before you glue or nail. Make sure it's going to fit. There's a little bit of a warp in it, as I thought, but you know, wood gets warped and there's not much you can do about that. You try to pick out the straightest pieces you can. But when I fasten this on in the shelf, I'll put brads down and it should hold it forever. I decided, I think it might look really good if I just left it raw and maybe just put some poly on it. So I'm going to sand this down now, get rid of any imperfections, some of the writing on the wood, my own marks, so that I can give it a little stain or maybe a seal. I haven't quite decided, but we'll do that next, after I get sanding. this shelf now, I flipped it over, changed my grit, so I'm using a 120 grit now, kind of smooth it out. I don't care about this side, right? This is the bottom, and you can see the warp in it, that's all right. And I'm just gonna give this a coat to protect it, but I don't really care what this looks like, because no one's gonna see this, but I don't want it to be raw wood. We gotta protect it. All right, well, I found this old shellac here that actually matches the floorboards when it's used on pine that's in the front of our house. I'm gonna use that for repairs. I think it'll work great on this. This is the bottom side. So I put a coat on, you swipe it on with a brush, and then you wipe the excess off with a sacrificial rag. You're not gonna be able to use that again. So I'm gonna let this dry. We're gonna get inside and see how that drywall's going. All right, so here we are. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm a little far away, but I want to get the full picture. And I'm waiting for a couple things to dry, so I thought I'd take you through how we put up drywall and taping and bedding, and I'll zoom you in closer so you can watch. All right, so drywall is gypsum board, is the other name it's called, because this area in here is made out of gypsum, and it's kind of extruded in here, and it's got some chemicals that help it sit together. And then you've got two pieces of paper. So you've got your facer and your backer, which usually just looks like cardboard. And that's all this is. This is what your wall is made out of. So when your parents say don't smash into the wall, that's why, right? Because it's really not that strong. Drywall is then applied to your ceilings and your walls, and it lays on studs. So this would be a stud, and the drywall would go in here, and we'd screw it. Now I'm not going to waste this 2x4 because I'm going to need it later, but so I'll get rid of that. And here underneath I've got a piece I cut off for the shelf that I don't need anymore, and a couple spare pieces of drywall here. And so what I'm going to do is show you how to attach this, and I'm going to show you then how to tape and bed it. All right, so we're going to fasten this now down. I've got impact driver, which is kind of dangerous to use with this. Professionals use other things, but this works for me. And our drywall screws. And that's why impact drivers don't work great for this, because they pop out, but we'll be all right. Now those would be into a stud. This is the other one. I'm just going to screw it anywhere because I got a flat board underneath it. But you would have a line drawn on this where your stud was, behind the wall or the ceiling. Now I'm careful that it's beneath the surface everywhere, because you don't want that screw poking out. So let's say now I've got my drywall hooked in. I'm going to show you after it's fastened how we're going to do our taping and bedding. So there are different ways to do this, and really I've got a really uneven seam here, which is because these two are not cut straight. They're just spare pieces, but this is a certain kind of tape that's adhesive, and you can see it's a mesh. A lot of people are using this now. There's an old tape that's paper. What's cool about this tape is that I can just put it down and then go over it. Where if it was the paper tape, what I'd have to do is put down some JC or joint compound and then put the tape on, and that's more of an art form than I can do. So I'll put this tape here just to show you what this is like. And it kind of sticks on that seam. So you can see this is self-adhesive just like any tape. And now I've got that seam covered, and it'll allow it to stretch and move and keep it from bubbling underneath. So the next step will then to be actually putting the JC or joint compound down. This is a type that's pink when it's wet, and then it'll dry white, and that's how I know it's getting close to drying. So I'll get a big glob here, as you saw, and I've got my knife here and my trowel. And then I would take it up at the top, and with a little pressure, move it down. Now, a lot of people start at the middle and move out until I've covered up that seam. Make sure my knife is clean. I'm going to come back and feather these edges a little bit. Now, do I care if this is perfect? No. All I care about right now is that this tape is covered. And I don't really care if I have divots or blobs yet. So now I've covered up that tape and more or less feathered out my edges, which means more pressure on the outside than the inside. And again, this is an art form that I'm not good at yet. So we're going to let this dry. It'll turn white for us, and once it turns white, then I'll know it's time for the next coat. All right, we're back here with our slightly dried first coat. I'm looking at it and it's not great, but then again, it's on the wall. I just take the sanding block, kind of knock down some high points. Sorry if it's shaking you. All right, what we do is just kind of wipe off all that. I'll take same trowel, same blade. Really, I need a thicker blade for this, but I'm not getting that out right now. All right. So that's been feathered out more or less. There's some bad spots in there, but I think it'll be okay. I'd probably come back in if I were really doing this and check out over here. I had a little high spots. Probably check down here. All right, and then what I would do is let this dry again. We'll let it dry and I'll come back and show you the final steps on it. All right, here we are back at the drywall. It's dried now. Got some ridges and some bumps because again, that's an art, but that's what sanding's for. And I just use a little block with some sandpaper here. And I'm gonna shake you, so it's gonna look weird, but again, I gotta put it on the table. So what I'm gonna do is just knock off any high points, any parts that look a little off. Make sure these edges are smooth and feathered. That's what the professional can do without the sand. Kind of feel on it. I still got some ridges up here. I want to be careful not to get down to the tape as I do this. So I'm working in towards the mound of joint compound I made over the tape. And I'll do this side too. And I probably would do a little more if it were a bedroom wall or something, but this is just to show you. So I'll show you what to do next. So next steps here, you would take just a rag and wipe this down. I would use a little wet rag just to make sure that all this powder is off, because you've made a lot of it, and that's what gets all over the floor and everything. And the next step is texture. And the professionals, when they do a whole wall, or if I were to do a whole wall, I'd use this big spray, but all I've got is this. So I'm not going to use a spray with a hopper. What I'm going to do is use this little machine, which kind of doesn't work great. But for what we're doing, it should work. We'll see if it still works. I used it before. Let me make sure my multi-tool's not going to get sprayed here. All right, and then sometimes I'll flip it to high and just put a little blast on there. So the reason you use texture is that it hides any of your little divots, your imperfections. If you see a smooth drywall, which you can do perfectly smooth, that's a floated drywall, that's hard to do and make it look good. So what we usually do is we'll put a texture on it like this. We'll let this dry, and then we come back and paint it. All right, so welcome to my shop, and I'm going to show you a little bit here about trim, which is going to be the next thing we'll do. And I'm going to take a couple of spare pieces here and cut them with the miter saw at 45 degrees. This is a dangerous thing, so I'm really careful with it. Always wear your safety glasses, and always watch your fingers. Obviously, this can take a finger off. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces at 45, and then I'll show you how we put those on the wall. All right. Well, we're back with our sample wall here. We're going to take the trim that we have here, or casing, and we're going to talk about how we would have fixed this. So this is usually used to hide a gap. Let's say there's a gap there between there and the studs, and this would go around your door or your window or whatever, and we cut this over on the miter saw. And you would measure this out, of course, and there's an old adage, you measure twice and cut once, and even when I measure twice, I mess up sometimes. I always end up buying more of this than I need. Here's some extra scrap, and I always start with scrap. So to attach this to your wall, the old method is you take a finish nail, hammer that finish nail in, and then you take a punch, get it all the way into the wood, and fill up that hole. And I've done many rooms that way until I finally bought the bullet and bit the bullet, I should say, and bought myself a brad nailer. This is a pneumatic brad nailer. Here are our brads, and this saves about 2 hours work on a room, maybe more. And so you would just line this up, and your brads will go in. It depends on where your wood is behind here. I would have already practiced with this on a scrap piece to see how deep it's going to be, if it's sticking through enough. But the brad nailer is very simple. I usually try to get it in this divot here. You can hear that compressor going, right? And so you would just do that all around, and you'd only have one little seam there to pop in, and this is what your wall would look like. So we've got painted, and I got the trim up, and I showed you how to do that. And the next step is going to be to cover these holes here, and that's what the threshold there is for. Thresholds are meant to go on wood, but I've got some issue here because it's going on this tile. So I'm going to use a mixture of brads and construction adhesive to lock all that down. And again, the inside doesn't matter because it's a closet. All right, we got our construction adhesive down, and I'm going to secure it with some brads, and hopefully it doesn't split the wood too badly because it's right on the edge.
I've started feeling Daddy.
That's good.
I'm getting away from this.
All right, we're down. Take a look. You just got to clean up.